Well, that was ludicrous. Clemson obliterates Carolina 38-10 in the Somebody's Gotta Win Bowl.
This is Kamori House, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Saturday, October 4th, 2025. You're coming into this live postcast edition of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and good grief, thanks for joining us for your first listener watch after the game. But you're a glutton for punishment just as much as I am. Clearly, this is a therapy session. We got to get to it. Welcome in all the everydayers. Welcome in all you Locked On Tar Heels Discord members, as well as the Locked On Tar Heels insiders. This episode's brought to you by Mazda. Like our Tar Heels players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the expected is only the beginning. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, gang. North Carolina falls 38-10 at the hands of Clemson. They're now 2-3 on the season, 0-1 in ACC play. That's Bill Belichick's first ACC game. Clemson has now won 7 straight in the series. Clemson is the team of these two that gets that first Power 4 win. And so we've got ourselves a therapy session. That's what we call them when Carolina loses. By the way, for those of you rushing off to the Dean Dome, the game ended at 3:35 Eastern. The blue-white scrimmage is supposed to tip an hour after the football game ends, so it should be around 4:35 p.m. Eastern time that we get going with that. For those of you coming in, if you want to hop in to the comments, we'll get to those later and see if you've got any takes, observations, or anything like that. I just want to start by throwing some numbers at you so you can hear and see how badly Carolina has been beaten in their Power 4 games, meaning games against ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and SEC. Of course, really, it's only Big 12 and ACC, but whatever. So the Charlotte and Richmond games, filter them out. In the 3 games North Carolina has played against Power 4 opponents, TCU, UCF, Clemson, here's what's happened. They have not scored 15 points yet. TCU, they got 9. UCF, 14, Clemson, 10. Actually, I got that backwards, didn't I? It was 14 against TCU. Yeah, I said that backwards. My apologies to all of us. 14 against TCU, 9 against UCF, and 10 today against Clemson. They have scored 4 total touchdowns in those games. 4 touchdowns. Are you hearing me? Here's the thing, though. Only one of those 4 touchdowns has come in the first half. And the other 3 that came in the second half were with Carolina down by at least 3 scores. So 3 of those 4 touchdowns came with Carolina down by 34 points, 24 points, and 35 points. One more stat for you. In totality, in these 3 Power 4 games, and here's the big picture of it, North Carolina has been outscored 120-33. They are just simply right now not only out-schemed, but out-talented. And so maybe that's where you just say already, is it 2026 yet? Because that's what we're looking ahead to. This, not only did the second half of this game become about playing for pride and honor and respect, I think we're at the point now where we just got to put our hands in the air and say, look, the rest of this season is now about playing for pride, honor, and respect, because Carolina just doesn't have it. I think that's what we are now going to have to wrap our brains around. Here's the other thing. It's like, this is the product coming off of an off week, right? And I know Clemson was too, right? Like both these teams had open weeks last week. Carolina's going to have another one next week before heading out to California to play Cal on a Friday. But I mean, my goodness, you're coming off an off week. And by my count, there were 3 different times in this game where Carolina was penalized for too many men in the backfield. It's one thing to say Carolina is out-talented, which they would have been by Clemson anyway. Like in a normal year, Clemson just is going to have more talent than North Carolina right now. But what Carolina hasn't done is shot themselves in the foot with those kind of penalties. This is easily the most penalized game of the year for Carolina, committing or 8 that were accepted for a total of 75 yards. There were several that were declined as well. Before this, they hadn't committed more than 5 that were accepted and no more than 55 yards. And so here they really beat themselves in that area as well. And that's for an outclassed team talent-wise, you just simply can't do that. But again, that's the kind of stuff that's happening coming off an off week. Let me give you one more number. Carolina surrenders 28 points to Clemson in the first quarter of this game. That's the most first quarter points allowed since August 25th of 2001. And yes, I did go back and do the research by myself in the second half of this game, which tells you about how exciting the second half of this game was. Back on August 25th, 2001, that was the first game of that season. Carolina down in Norman playing OU, gave up 31 first quarter points. Woof. Funny enough, the closest number to this was last year when Carolina gave up 25 in the first quarter to, anybody remember? James Madison, and that 70-50 loss there to the Dukes of JMU. Gross. And here's what's crazy is it's not that a lot of times if a team does something like this, like, 28 points in the first quarter, Carolina must have turned the ball over. There was like a pick 6 or a scoop and score. Nothing like that. It was all simply Carolina's inability to do anything defensively in the first quarter of this football game. And quite frankly, offensively as well. We'll get to that in a second. Clemson scores on their first play from scrimmage on offense, a trick play. On the second drive, they score in 3 plays. On the third drive, they score in 5 plays, even though the first 2 of those were TFLs. And then on the fourth drive, they score in 7 plays, meaning James Madison scored 14 points on their first 4 plays from scrimmage. They scored 21 points on their first 9 plays from scrimmage and 28 points on their first 16 plays from scrimmage. What on earth? That just simply can't be the case, right? Like, I know we talked, like on yesterday's show, we kind of looked at like, are teams scoring these many points because A, Carolina's defense is that bad, or because B, the offense isn't helping them out at all and they're out on the field a ton? And I think Anthony Pagnotta very wisely said, it's probably a little bit of both. But in the first quarter of a football game to do that, yes, you're a little bit gassed because the offense wasn't helping. But I mean, that was just sheer lack of execution. It was getting duped on double moves. It was missed tackles. Got to put that on the defense squarely. As for, the offense, it's that same story we've seen all season long. Carolina comes out, that first drive, quite successful. Thank you very much. 58 yards. Very nice. Wish they had finished it off with 7 instead of 3, but they got 3. We'll take it. The problem is that after that, here's what the offense did. It's just what they've done all season against these Power 4 opponents. The next 4 drives were all 3 and outs. Here's how many yards they accumulated. +5. And that was the most of those 4 drives, because then they went -4 yards, -3 yards, -3 yards, for a total of -5 over the course of the next 4 drives as Carolina was going 3 and outs. Heck, I was celebrating on Carolina's 6th drive because they actually picked up a first down and didn't go 3 and out. In fact, after those drives 2 through 5, they only had 1 more 3 and out in the game, but it was, the next to last drive for the Tar Heels when it was all said and done. So, we'll talk about Max Johnson and all that here in the next segment. And so it's like, again, great scripted first drive. Things look good. Max Johnson comes out, completes his first 4 passes. Yay. But then nothing after that. Some of that's on the talent. Some of it is on, quite frankly, Freddie Kitchens. Why are we going Wildcat on a 3rd and 3 early in this game? You're outsmarting yourself. You're trying to get too cute when Max Johnson has been able to complete passes, and the running game to that point and really all game long had shown absolutely nothing. So yes, again, the talent probably isn't there, but let Max have an opportunity in that moment. That made 0 sense to me, and I'm sure it didn't to you either. Well, and that's what we need to get to. Let's go talk about Max Johnson. Did he show enough to stay QB1? Did you like Carolina keeping him in for the whole game? We'll try to talk about Max Johnson and some of those things all coming up here in just a second. Right after I tell you about Mazda. Okay, this episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds and culture and keep moving the game forward. This week, well, there wasn't many of those moments that moved the game forward, but I got to give it to Max Johnson. Because again, this dude, second game as starter at quarterback for North Carolina, gruesome leg injury, has had some moments this year where he's come in because Gio's been hurt, but he comes into this game, gets to start, and plays the whole. I mean, it's just what a crazy, crazy cool story. So I feel like not only did Max move the game forward, but he moved humanity forward by being able to play in this one. And I think that's really cool. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, let's get back into this thing. As we do so, I'm going to pull up the box score so that you can see, for those of you watching on YouTube, what happened in this game. There's a lot of names on there because obviously both teams kind of emptying their benches as the game went along. But where we need to go next is talking about Max Johnson. Max had taken, by all reporting, most of the first team snaps over the course of the past couple weeks while Carolina had their off week and coming into this one. And, you know, whether Gio could have gone or not, maybe Coach Belichick will tell us. But ultimately, Max is QB1 in this game. It's the right call. I've been begging for it. Finally, they did it. To be honest, it didn't help the offense ultimately much at all. It did from a completion standpoint. Let me remind you about the completions in the TCU and UCF games. Max was 9 for 11 when he came in the TCU game. Nice. Gio Lopez in that game before he got hurt was 4 of 10. 4 completed passes. Max had 4 completed passes on the first drive of this football game, literally. How about the UCF game? Let's go to what happened there. Max Johnson, 11 of 19, 67 yards. Gio Lopez, 11 of 14, 87 yards. I forgot to give you the yardage on that on the TCU game. Max 9 of 11, 103 yards. Gio 4 of 10 for 69. So against Power 4 competition, Gio hadn't had more than 87 yards, and Max had 67 and 103. Today, in a full game, still not great. But guess what happened? Max Johnson threw for over 200 yards. And we, like, as absurd as it sounds, we have to celebrate the fact that North Carolina had 200 plus passing yards. And yes, I know a lot of that is accumulated in the second half as Carolina as Clemson is called off the dogs. Because the ultimate embarrassment in this game is the fact that Cade Klubnik came out of the game with 3.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. So that, like, sure, context is critically important when we say this. I need to break it down by half there. Maybe we'll do that later as we get into the week. But Max, 213 passing yards, 26 of 42. And remember, the completions, Max and Gio combined against TCU for 13 completions. Max and Gio combined for 22 completions in the UCF game, and, 70 and 90, like basically 160 yards or whatever. Hey, 213 for Max. Did he do enough to be QB1? Well, he didn't blow things away, but he didn't have any interceptions. He didn't throw any touchdowns. And Carolina, scored about as many as they did against TCU and UCF. So it's honestly kind of a toss-up. It doesn't really matter all that much. But Carolina was at least able to sustain more drives, at least a little bit. They were able to complete passes. And that's not nothing. A big part of the issue was the running game. Benjamin Hall, the leading rusher, 5 of 24 with a long of 11, which was his touchdown run, which was in the second half of this game when everything was all out of hand. Juju June, 5 rushes for 16 yards with a long of 15. Max Johnson, 3rd leading rusher, 5 attempts for 10 yards. Carolina only had 18 rushing attempts for 57 yards. And good grief. I mean, it's just what it did. How many sacks did Clemson have? Only 1 sack. And so there's not much yardage loss there. Keep in mind that that's part of college football rushing totals. So for my money's worth, and again, remember, you've got another off week before heading to Cal next week. For my money's worth, Max has done enough to stay QB1 for at least another shot. It's kind of weird because Clemson, yes, I know they've struggled, but still a supremely more talented football team than what Carolina has on their roster. Cal is looking better than we thought they would, but they're not Clemson. And so I think you give Max at least one more shot before you make a decision. And honestly, who knows where Gio's at? The other thing, too, as part of that conversation about did Max do enough to stay QB1, which, again, I say yes, is that Max Johnson played the entirety of a blowout. Every single offensive snap that Carolina took, he was the quarterback. I guess there was that wildcat, and I don't think, I can't remember if he was on the field for that. I don't think he was, but you get my point. For my money's worth, I like Max Johnson staying in the entire game because if you're the staff, you want to get as much film on him as you can, even if it's against second and third stringers for Clemson. You want to test that leg, see how it holds up for the entirety of a game. And again, the film. For my money's worth, the coaching staff leaves him in because they want to get every shred of evidence they can. They want to get as much of a sample size as they can to start making determinations about is Max our guy going forward. For my money, that's exactly why they do that and why he stayed in the entire game. So if I had to make a call right now, Max Johnson is QB1 at Cal in 2 weeks. That's where that will be. Here's the other thing. A game like this where Clemson opens up with those 28 points in the first quarter and then only needed 7 in the second quarter. Because look, the game was over by the end of the first 15 minutes. The second half of this game is one of those games that becomes about pride and honor and respect. As a competitor, as an athlete, do you care enough to keep showing up? Because there were times in the first half where they simply didn't. Carolina looked defeated, dejected, and wanting to be anywhere. Like they probably wanted to join everyone else rushing off to the Dean Dome to get there for the blue and white scrimmage. That's what the feeling felt like it looked like on the field. But, my question was, what do you do in the second half? Do you come out and show yourselves to care and to compete? And they did. Allowed Clemson 0 points in the third quarter and only 3 more points in totality. And I know that game flow dictated both teams doing things differently than they would have in a competitive game, but still, only 3 more points allowed in the second half of this game. And again, yes, I know it's against mostly second and third stringers, but still, you got to find something if you're the staff to say, hey guys, look what you did here. That's not nothing, right? And so they slowed them down a lot more, and you can live with that. One other thing I want to point out before we take another break and then get to your comments and questions, which we'll see if we got any of those, and if not, we'll get on out and that'll be fine. A couple funny moments. One was that moment where Clemson had 3 straight penalties that started with 3 on one play. Ref comes out. There are 3 fouls by the offense, which is like, how often is that happening? But then they had another penalty and then another penalty. They started before those penalties. They were at the Carolina 26. When it was all said and done, they found themselves at their own 44. And it was like whatever in 39 or something like that. It was crazy stuff. Also, I don't know if you remember Ian Shefflin, the chef, that transitioned from Clemson's basketball team to their football team. He was in there for a couple plays, almost had a touchdown, well defended in the end zone by Carolina. That was neat. But the coolest thing of the day was wide receiver Jordan Shipp wearing Tylee Kraft's number 13, and not just wearing it, but it also said Kraft on the back. Just a neat touch to Tylee, his birthday, or excuse me, yes, his birthday was this week, if I remember that correctly. And so kind of cool there. Jordan Shipp did lead the team in receiving 5 catches for 41 yards. And you'll take that. I mean, not really anything from Chris Culliver. I'm trying to look. Did he have like not even a target? Woof. And there was a play where it was a screen out to the flat, or almost to the sideline, and Culliver was the one supposed to be blocking for Shipp and just got blown up, and then Shipp got blown up. And it's like, do a job, right? Like, it's those kind of minute things that again, for a less talented team, you have to do those little things. Carolina didn't, and there's some of what happens. All right. Well, we do want to get to the comments, see what you guys have to say and your takes from this game, and that's what we're going to do all coming up here in just a second. Right after I tell you about DoorDash. Y'all, the weekend is here, and it's time to look at today's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, this player delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Well, to be honest, right, there wasn't really much of an MVP of this game for Carolina. But what I do want to say is what I said about the second half. Kudos to the team for continuing to fight and struggle and save face in a way, just try to find some respect for yourselves as you go down the second half. And it's not about like you performed in crazy ways, but it's just like Max Johnson staying out there and taking hits and playing the full game when he could say, Coach, we're done here. Can we get Newkirk in or whatever, and so we'll take that. And that's just what you got to do. And so like Carolina showed up in the second half to keep fighting, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, today, keep that streak alive, fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, and this goes all the way through this promo through November 18th. All right, I'm going to leave the box score up for those who are watching to be able to see. And Greg Ward says, 2-10 season downloading. That is likely a reality we might have to hone in on, right? Like, let me pull up the schedule here in real time, because, I just said it, this game at Cal coming up in 2 weeks after another off week. Cal looks a lot better than we thought they would preseason. That's tough. Road game, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. Yuck. Then Carolina hosts Virginia the next week. Virginia looks a lot better than we thought they were going to. Beat Florida State last weekend. Then you go up to Syracuse on Halloween. There's potential there. Syracuse lost. They beat this same Clemson team, but they did lose their quarterback for the season. But they just beat the team that just obliterated Carolina. Saturday, November 8th, Stanford comes to town. That's probably your best last shot for a win, if we're being honest. After that, Carolina goes to Wake. Wake, they're whatever. Maybe Carolina starts to figure some things out. Then Duke comes to town. And then you go to NC State. So that's the nice thing. Month of November, Carolina literally never leaves the state. Hosting Stanford at Wake, hosting Duke at State. Maybe you start to be able to figure a few things out by then, and you can steal a win or two. But there is a very real world in which Carolina could get one more win this season. I feel like surely they got to be able to beat Stanford coming across the country. Stanford, I think Carolina going to match at least talent capability there. So we'll see what happens. Michael C. asks, are they still going to do the Hulu documentary? You know why? The answer is yes to that question, because people love to watch a train wreck. And that's what this team is right now. So absolutely, Hulu's going to do an inside the scenes on that. It just is what it is. Jimmy Howard says, it doesn't look like just throwing all that money at football. It ain't working. And I will always wonder if it hurt basketball. And thank goodness we've got this blue-white scrimmage coming up. Jimmy, I had this exact thought during this game today, just thinking of like, oh, there's this football game where the Tar Heels are getting embarrassed. And then we're going to go to the blue and white scrimmage. And I know that Carolina has doled out a lot of money for basketball as well, but you've got to think about how much did Carolina invest into this football relaunch at the expense of basketball success, which is, if you're North Carolina, you got to remember that this is where your bread is buttered over and over and over again all day long. It's Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, Duke. These schools don't, like, yes, invest money into football, but don't spite basketball. Like, that is where you've got to live. And that's what North Carolina needs to do. Now, let's also keep in mind, like, for example, they were saying on the broadcast, I don't know if Carolina knew, had things figured out in the transfer portal and all that. And sure, there's some of that, but you got to continue to remember this staff was hired after the portal opened. So, there were players already gone, didn't have time to strategically make any decisions. And so, of course, they didn't have a good transfer portal plan. They didn't know they were going to be coaching this football team until after the portal was open. And so, yeah, this year is a train wreck, and it's going to be. We just have to accept that. But I am curious, and of course, this is me saying I'm looking ahead to next year. But yeah, how do they do with a full rotation and the ability to strategically plan for the transfer portal and what's going to happen there? Because obviously, a big part of this year is going to be evaluating and developing what they've got right now, and then looking at, okay, so what do we need to add? What do we need to bring in? Who needs to kind of ship off, and all of that stuff. So yes, Jimmy, I agree with you, man. So true. Especially if it comes at the expense of basketball. That's my biggest concern, is let's not forget, again, as I said, where the bread is buttered. So, Darley Bowler says, what are you talking about, man? You were ridiculous. You don't know nothing about football. He should have been pulled out the game. He's not that good. He cannot move. I think you're prejudiced, man. Please, he took a starting quarterback. Well, here's the truth. Who else are you going to play, Bowler? Because Gio's out and he's not a starting quarterback. And clearly, Newkirk and Bryce kind of aren't ready yet. You might be looking at redshirting Bryce. There's no one else to play. They're trying to figure out if they've got something at Max. Who was QB1 heading into last season? Dude, I totally hear you. But what else were you going to do? I completely push back on you. And a lot of time I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe you're right. No, I do not agree with you in any way on that take, dude. That's a bad call. Come on with that. KD says, is the blue and white scrimmage streamed? Not officially so. Last year, Inside Carolina put the blue and white scrimmage up on Twitter, or excuse me, on YouTube. I can't remember if it was after the fact or in real time. But I would expect, whether it's they or just a random person, we will get it up at some point. So keep your eyes out for that, which is a moment to say, if it is on YouTube, here's something cool that's going to happen tomorrow, Sunday afternoon. Coach Rob and I are going to do a live rewatch on YouTube. We'll get the stream of it. Something YouTube allows you to do is you can use other people's videos as long as you're providing your own commentary. So Coach Rob and I are going to do that, kind of the look that we have going on right now on YouTube, where the box score is right now. We'll have the game going, and Coach Rob and I'll just be talking about it, unpacking it. So that'll be Sunday afternoon. We'll post about it, but we got to make sure, though, first that the game is going to be out there. All right. Thanks so much for being with us, everybody. Good to be there. All right. Oh, this was another embarrassment. There's no way around that. It is what it is, and you just got to suck it up and take it on the chin. You either quit or you keep finding ways to get better one day at a time. And that's what this football team is going to do, because they're athletes, because Bill Belichick understands what it takes to keep growing and getting better, or else he wouldn't have all the rings he does. That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean Carolina's going to suddenly start winning a bunch of football games this year, but they're going to keep growing. And if you are truly a Carolina fan, you'll stick with it. Because if this eventually turns around, man, it could be a whole new world. We don't know. It might just continue to be bad, and that's fine. We'll see what happens. So hopefully Coach Rob and I will be with you tomorrow to do a live rewatch of the scrimmage, which would be a blast if that happens. If not, we'll be back with you on Monday to unpack the scrimmage and talk more about the football game as well. All right, you guys, if you haven't subscribed to the show on audio and video, make sure you do that. For those of you watching on YouTube, there's a subscribe button right down there. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, man, that's a great place to be. It's always kicking. That link's in the show notes. If you want to go next level with the show, that link is also in the show notes for the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders. Even on a day like this, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel, even when it's painful. We'll talk again tomorrow for the live rewatch of the basketball scrimmage, but until then, peace.